Sorry, yes.
Is not okay, and we're recording our non-speaker right now.
Catherine, do you have announcements to make?
Not really, just the usual about accommodations. Well, I'll do the usual about accommodations because it's useful for everybody. So we have cart captioning, which you probably see on your screen right now. And on my screen, the CC is visible at the bottom, more or less on the right-hand side. We also have the option for stream text captions, and that link is in the chat, which is okay. It's there. Somebody's got a message there that I'll go back to in a minute. And we also have Spanish captions, which if you click on the CC, you have the option of Spanish. It's the only foreign language we have an option for this particular meeting. I'm going to ask that hold your questions until after the presentation, assuming we have one. And if you have questions that you want to ask before the talk is over, you can put them in the chat. So somebody suggested. Oh, no, it's just the captions. Okay.
You know where Tom is located? Is he in our time zone?
He's in Scottsdale.
Oh, I hope he's. I'm just wondering if he's confused about the time zone.
Well, he must oh, well, I think Arizona's not on standard time. I think they're one of the states that don't observe.
Well, standard or not, it's still not New York time. So
I don't see the CC for closed captions at the bottom of my screen.
Okay. Do you see do you see something? What I have is on the right is a little leave icon to sign out, and then more, and then CC. Okay, so try clicking on more. They might be available through more.
Okay, I see audio, video, more. Click on more.
It'll be under more then, yes.
Okay. All right, I'm looking down. Okay. I see captions. I guess that's what we're referring to, yeah. Right? Caption. And just click on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you can move the caption box around if it's in the way of the speakers.
It's not really in the way of anything. I see caption language, view full transcript, caption settings. Oh, wait a minute.
You should be able to just click the captions themselves and not a sub-menu underneath.
Okay, I did. Okay, all right. I do. I see it now. Yeah, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Jerry Bergman suggests, and I think maybe we should go ahead and do this, that we have both Juliette Sterkens and Steve Frazier attending. Are you both here? Juliette and Steve, could you speak?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Juliette.
Let me put on a different microphone.
Okay, and is Steve here too? No, okay.
His name is on the listed as connected.
Is listed as connected.
Oh, hi.
Okay. Well, Juliette, why not, if you don't mind, I mean, I know you know a whole lot about this issue, and I know you know that the question on a lot of people's minds is where we are with Auracast, and we're going to see it.
Yeah. Hey,
I'm about to be on a meeting.
It
hasn't shown up.
Catherine,
please, you have to mute yourself. We're listening. Mute yourselves, everybody. Mute yourselves. Nancy, Nancy Kingsley, we're hearing everything you're saying. Can you mute yourself?
I've already muted her.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Juliette is actually an expert on hearing loops and is probably single-handedly responsible for many of the hearing loop installations in this country. And I know she knows also about Auracast. So Juliette, if you don't mind, just talking a little bit
before,
or unless Thomas doesn't show up.
I texted Thomas.
Okay, and well, we've texted him and called him and emailed him.
Yeah. And apparently he's recovering from a seizure. He's been having some seizures.
Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah. And so I I tried to nudge him, but he says he's not capable. So what I could do is I could go over some of my slides that Karen McLennan, the audiologist from Long Island, and I just gave to a group of audiologists. I don't know how many people have seen that session. It was last week, Friday.
I think most people haven't. And
Okay.
if you could step in with that, I think it would be.
Yeah, and I'll dip over some of the beginning, and then if Steve is here and he wants to chime in, but let me can I share my slides? I think it looks like I can.
Yes, you should have permission.
Okay, so obviously it's totally unprepared. But
I just want to say thank you in advance. Unprepared or not, you're never unprepared.
Yeah.
I'm going to mute myself and let you take over from here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go over the slides and then we'll open it up for discussion. And if anything pops up or if Thomas does show up, then I'll just go off the air. So Karen and I gave a lecture, and the reason we did this lecture is partially because there is a requirement in the state of New York, thank you Jerry Bergman and others, that makes it mandatory that audiologists and dispensers take a class every 2 years on assistive listening and telecoils. I mean, who knew, right? And so there were over 600 people signed up to take that class. So there's a lot of interest. And the title was about a hybrid solution using Auracast and using telecoils. So that's the background that you need to know. And Karen started off our lecture with talking about some phenomenal successes. Hearing loops at airports, and Max and I just came back from a airport in Appleton, and they are going to do hearing loops in Appleton too. It's kind of the crown on my achievement here in Wisconsin, so I'm super excited. But we wanted to demonstrate to professionals that these loops aren't going away. And we'll get to the reason why that's important, and being in New York, that the Statue of Liberty Museum has hearing loops. This is one of the few taxis that says hearing loop. Currently, it says induction loops. I've pushed really, really hard to make this hearing loops, but that got nixed in New York. That the Lincoln Center has hearing loops, partially the reason, of course, of Jerry Bergman. Thank you, Jerry, if you're online. But also that if you're going to go to Massachusetts and take the Green Line, that some of these new trams or trains now have hearing loops. And I've personally encountered hearing loops in trams and metros in Australia. I mean, cool things. That 3,000 taxi cabs in Madrid, Spain got hearing loops, that there's hearing loops at this escalator at some type of conference that Ran Mayrav, who is on this call, might be able to talk more about. That Amtrak is going to put hearing loops in their new state-of-the-art trains. But also that there's hearing loops happening around the country in performing arts centers and live music venues. And Florida wasn't even on the map the last time we did this webinar, and this year they're at the top with 50 venues. But in Wisconsin, we have over 35 school theaters and performing arts centers that utilize hearing loop technologies. And if you move your captions, you'll see that there's 440 loops around the country. And that even hearing aid manufacturers are installing loops in their training centers. This is at the Sterkens facility in Minneapolis. And for those of you who haven't been to the Center for Hearing Act's website, and it uses the old hearingloop.org website, you're in for a surprise. It's being managed by Wynn Wyman, and she's doing a terrific job. It is no longer just about hearing loops. It is about all different technologies. And let's say you go somewhere to a state. If you click under places, you can go to your state and you can find out where hearing loops are. But
Juliette,
yeah,
could I interject just for a moment with
Go
your
ahead.
permission? We've already had one questioner write in and ask, what are hearing loops? So
All right.
please just kindly back up a little bit and talk about
sorry. Oh,
the
sorry.
consumer side and not the venue side. And
Yep.
the kind of access we need with our hearing devices. And then
Yeah.
if you'd like to segue, maybe with Steve's help, if he's listening,
Yeah. And
into Auracast, which is
And-
the other system that many people are concerned about right now.
Jerry, I'm glad you brought it up. And there is, I think, another slide coming on hearing loops. But in a nutshell, hearing aids are corrective or assistive. They are not corrective. So if you've never attended one of these events, if you're not an HLAA member, I just assumed that you were all HLAA members here today. But hearing aids are assistive. That means that even with the best of hearing aids and the best of cochlear implants, they're not going to give you normal hearing, unlike glasses, who for most people give normal vision. So hearing aids have shortcomings, but those shortcomings can be overcome with a number of different technologies. At home, it can be a TV streamer, it can be a remote microphone, and I'm going to recommend, if you're watching today, that you go to you Google my name, Juliette Sterkens, and you Google TEDx, and I have done a whole talk on hearing aids and what hearing aids can and can't do. So if hearing aids don't give you normal hearing, what are some of the ways that you can hear better? At home, that can be a remote microphone, it can be a Roger pen, and way too much information to try and explain that right now. But a TV streamer, if your professional has never discussed a TV streamer and how a TV streamer can help you hear better, you're missing out, because a TV streamer will stream the sound from your television direct into your hearing aids. So then, what is a consumer to do who has trouble hearing at a meeting or in a house of worship or in a theater? Well, the law mandates that assistive technology be installed. It's very broad law, but it states that where PA systems are installed, an assistive listening system shall be provided. Now, that excludes nonprofit organizations in most states, but it includes all courtrooms. All right. And there are different types of assistive technology, and I'm going to get into that in this lecture, but in a hearing loop, in its simplest form, streams the sound from a lectern wirelessly via changes in the magnetic field direct to hearing aids if your hearing aid has a telecoil. And if you're new here and you've never heard the word telecoil, there's going to be some pictures that show up, and I highly recommend that you either contact somebody at the chapter or contact me, and I'm going to fill you in with more information, or go to the Center for Hearing Access, because it will explain what hearing loops are, what the different types of assistive technology are. So if you're traveling, go to places and find hearing loops in your state. So the Center for Hearing Access has access to all the hearing loops that we are aware of in the country and can provide you with a list. So this is a hearing loop of all the hearing loops in Massachusetts. Now, the Center for Hearing Access also gives information about other systems, and that includes FM technology, infrared technology, and the future use of Auracast. That's all I'm going to say right now. I'm going to get to more in a minute. All right, so here are these other systems, and there's a comparison chart. There is audio over Wi-Fi, Auracast, FM or radio frequency, FM and radio frequency troubleshooting, and infrared. So the other progress that we've made in the last few years is that Google Maps is now listing hearing loops on Google Maps. So, for example, if you Google the Jacob Burns Film Center, right there, and then underneath the photos, it lists overview, showtimes, reviews, update. But if you were to go one more to the right, it says the word about right there next to update. If you click on the word about, so you can just try this right now with the Statue of Liberty. Use your smartphone. Find the Statue of Liberty on Google Maps, find the word about, and then find out under about what type of accessibility they offer. And you can see that the Jacob Burns Center offers an assistive hearing loop. Now, they don't talk about FM, they don't talk about IR, they don't talk about Auracast. At the moment, it's assistive hearing loops. Right there. So in Wisconsin, where I've been partially responsible for great progress, in the spring of 2011, there were a couple of dozen. I live in Oshkosh, about an hour south of Green Bay. But today, there are over 900 hearing loops in the state, including 6 pages of hearing loops. And I keep those on my website, Hearing Loop, or loopwisconsin.com. Theaters, this is a Shakespearean theater, dinner theater, the Milwaukee Rep has a loop. And then last March, I gave a TED Talk in the Oshkosh Grand Opera House, and that theater has a loop as well. So I talked about limitations of hearing aids, and I'm not going to go to huge detail, but it's important to know, and frankly, this is what we're teaching audiologists and hearing aid professionals, that even with the best of hearing aids, the deficit can be significant. And I'm just going to show you. If you have a hearing loss that ranges between 70 and 90 decibel, which a lot of people have in the high frequencies, even with hearing aids, there's going to be residual hearing loss of about 40, depending on how the hearing aids are fit, decibel hearing loss, residual hearing loss. So hearing aids don't give you normal hearing. Also, hearing aid microphone distances are limited, and this is from a study from Matt Backey, and he found that the hearing aid microphones, the effective range for normal conversation is about 50 inches. But for some people, it's only 25 or 30 inches, and for others, it's much wider. It can easily be 8, 9, 10 feet. It depends on your hearing loss, your ability to discriminate, your ability to fill in the gaps. It depends on a lot of things. And then I also explain why people with hearing loss have so much trouble hearing in background of noise. Number one, it's because as we age, we all lose the ability to filter out speech from background noise. And number two, hearing loss aggravates that problem. And the answer is your audiologist may tell you you've got the best hearing aids in the world, you've got directional microphones, yada, yada, yada. But hearing aids can only improve your ability in background of noise about 5 dB. Well, what if you need 10 or 20? There's no way that your 5 decibels in your hearing aid is going to give you the hearing you once had when you were 20 years old. So this is an article written by an audiologist who started wearing hearing aids and said, you know what? Used alone, my hearing aids do not deliver. And the only way to overcome shortcomings of hearing aids is to use assistive technology. At home, it's TV, remote microphone, TV streamer, remote microphone, but in public, it means using an assistive listening system. And that in order to couple your hearing aids to assistive listening systems, you need a telecoil. Now, this is just a study because, professionals like to see, does it really work? Well, yes, it really works. This is a recording by a hearing aid that can make 2 recordings. One recording out of the loop, a little snippet of sound, and one recording in the loop, same hearing aid, on the ear, in a real live experience. I mean, Jerry, wouldn't it be terrific if we could do that at the Lincoln Center, right? So I just want you to look at these numbers. This is in a quiet city hall with good microphones. The audiologist is measuring speech discrimination using automatic speech recognition, Google speech to text. With just the hearing aids, Google speech to text could only make out 57% of the words correct. And would you look what happens in the loop? 91%. But I'll draw your attention to another one. This is at the airport baggage claim. The hearing aids pick up nothing, 2.6%. That's nothing if you just use a microphone. And look what the hearing aids do in the loop. Almost 90% understanding. That's the kind of stuff that brings hearing aid users to tears. All right? That's why I do what I do. So there's the proof. And then audiologists also need to be convinced that it really works for consumers. And these are just some quotes. And I still can't talk about some of these quotes without crying, right? People who used to clap when others clapped and laughed when others laughed. although I usually didn't hear what it was about. Now I hear every word in church. I absolutely love the hearing loop. I still hear Dorothy say this to me. I mean, this is terrific, right? I get emails from people who say, I saw your TED Talk and it changed my husband's world. And if people in church only knew how much better you could hear with hearing loops. And thank you, I put a loop in my home and it made a big difference. So I feel like I got to convince each and every audiologist to listen to consumers. So if you're on this call, you need to direct your professional to take this class. They get a 1-hour credit. So, yeah.
Two questions about loops that you've talked about. One, perhaps you can address. The first is when you were talking about the prevalence of loop installations. Richard Parker asked, how many are working in Wisconsin? And the second question that's equally relevant, I think, is if hearing loops are still a technology of choice, why are manufacturers no longer putting them in hearing aids?
They're not putting them in hearing aids. How's that for a negation? They are not putting them in hearing aids. But the professionals indeed have to, they struggle with finding the right models. And I'm going to get to that in this lecture because
Juliette,
Yeah.
this is Catherine. I just want to say that, you know, most of the people signed on here because we advertise this as being about
Auracast.
You're
Getting
going to
there.
get to how that fits in, right?
I'm getting there.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
So I'm torn between how much detail you want me to go in, or if people are saying what's a hearing loop.
Okay, I think you can assume that most of the people who are here are fairly
Perfect. I'm
cognitive.
going to skip over some of this.
Yeah.
And Catherine, if you could give some equal time, please, to Steve Frazier,
Yep.
who got some
Thank you,
data
Jerry,
on the
and
prevalence of Auracast.
let's pause for a minute. Juliette, do you want to turn your the Auracast part of the talk over to Steve Frazier? And Steve Frazier, is that okay with you?
Okay.
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Or-
I would really like for me to go over what I've been teaching audiologists about Auracast before we talk about Steve's portion.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So let me just skip over this because this is all directed at audiologists. All right. Here's the image about the hearing loop, but it's important to know that if there are people here who've never used a hearing loop, but if they have a telecoil and they say, but there are no hearing loops in my area, you can use your hearing aids with FM and infrared systems. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But here's the Auracast. Is the future of Auracast here, right? Auracast is being billed as a technology that will allow users to walk into a facility with wireless earbuds, with hearing aids, with bone-anchored hearing aids, and with cochlear implants, and have the sound stream direct into these devices. That's the future. That's what we're all talking about and what we're hoping for. But what will be required, most likely, is the use of an intermediary device, a handshake device. And that without that intermediary device, there is no direct connection between the hearing aid and Auracast. You must have a smartphone, most likely in the beginning, because the technology to have the Auracast stream direct into hearing aids without a smartphone hasn't been developed. That's a
That's not
concern.
true.
That's a concern of advocates. Okay. Now,
Steve is shaking his head.
Auracast will be used two different ways. The first way is audio sharing. That means that with your smartphone, you can share audio to other people's earphones and to other people's phones. It will require that you buy new hearing aids, new implants, new smartphones to make this work, but this is exciting technology. So anybody in your TV room will be able to tune into the sound from your TV, but it will require new hardware, meaning a new television or a dongle in your television. The second use of Auracast is a mouthful. Auracast broadcast audio used as part of an assistive listening system. And that involves theaters, lectures, meetings, live sound, right? At the moment, there are no public Auracast systems on the market today. Now, Steve may tell you differently, but professional Auracast transmitters at the moment do not exist. What is needed to make this work for consumers, young and old, hearing aids, implants, and earbuds, is a number of things if the technology is going to be used as an assistive listening system. Number one, we need an international standard. The standard is not expected to be finalized in December of 2027. We need a dedicated Auracast assistive listening stream. People with hearing loss do not need to be bombarded with all sounds. They need sound that is clearer, that is focused on speech, and it needs to have what is called an enhanced signal-to-noise ratio. This will not be simple plug and play. Now, it might be plug and play if it's a very small meeting room, but in a large performing arts center, it's going to require audio engineering. Also, the hearing aid industry has promised that this technology will be just as simple to use as a telecoil. Exact words that they told us. That technology has not been used yet. You ought to be able to walk in, sit down, push a button on a hearing aid. Now, if you want to use your smartphone, fine. But my mother can only use a push button. All right? We need studies. We need demonstrations that this technology works. I've been in the hearing aid industry for 40 years, and there has never, ever been a hearing aid product rollout that was problem-free. Never. And now we want every different hearing aid manufacturer, tiny batteries, tiny antennas, every earbud, every smartphone, every Auracast transmitter, all to work problem-free from the beginning. It isn't going to happen. And we need proof that it will work for people who are hard of hearing. We're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater yet. All right? There's also been big discussions about end-to-end latency. It's one thing to say the Auracast transmitter has 50 millisecond delay, but we also need to consider the time that it takes from the wireless microphone and the soundboard and what the hearing aid is adding to the latency. So again, we need studies to demonstrate that this works. And then our point in our lecture to consumers, to audiologists, was we need the manufacturers to step up. Manufacturers need to provide information in consumer education booklets, and audiologists need to educate consumers. So, for the foreseeable future, if you go to the Empatronic website about Auracast, you will see that Auracast will initially function as an FM system. That means that no, you won't be able to hear with your hearing aid and your wireless earbuds, maybe with your wireless earbuds, but with your current hearing aids, you will have to go to the service desk and pick up an Auracast receiver with a neck loop. And that brings me full circle to the argument to professionals and to the hearing industry that we need telecoils in hearing aids today and in the future. So audiologists, conscientious audiologists are struggling, and that means that right now consumer organizations around the world are pleading with the hearing aid manufacturers to not eliminate telecoils. This is from the IFHO Federation, and this is a declaration from the Center for Hearing Access about the fact that consumers need it all. By the way, all these organizations at the bottom of the screen have undersigned this statement. And this goes into a lot more detail, the one on the left. And we are hoping that these same organizations will underwrite this statement as well. So that pretty much concludes my portion. Other than that, I recommend to professionals that were in our lecture that they fit devices that include telecoils and Auracast, so that they can help their patients hear when Auracast starts becoming installed in public venues, but for the time being can use the thousands of hearing loops, FM and infrared systems installed around the world. Actually, they're millions. So I don't need to go over this. You've all seen this, but that's it.
Juliette, thank you very much. A lot
You're
of
welcome.
people are asking if we will be able to send them the slides. Would that be possible, edited to
You bet.
do what your talk did? Okay, thank you. And Steve, I think now what we want to try to do is shift the discussion to Auracast, just some practicalities. And Juliette set it up. It's clear, I think, from what everybody is saying, that it's a system that will exist in at the same time we continue to have hearing loops, which are by far the best listening systems available now. So if you can talk a little bit about the timetable, what the obstacles are, what kind of venues they'll be used in. I think most of us don't really know anything about this. So I know this is, you're not at all prepared for this, but we're turning it over to you. And thank you again, Juliette.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, let me begin by saying I did not expect to be anything other than a listener for this particular meeting. My camera wasn't even working. I don't know how I look on the screen because I was in a dark room until I turned a lamp on. And I was having trouble getting the microphone to work because I hadn't anticipated using a microphone.
Okay,
So
Steve, wait, this is Catherine. We can see you and we can hear you, but Juliette needs to take her slides down so that we actually are looking at you instead of her slides.
You're looking at my best messy bedroom then.
Okay, thank you.
Because I had not anticipated this. Let me begin by saying that I think some people misunderstand my position in regard to Auracast. When I went to my first HLAA meeting, one of the women spoke up as the meeting started and said, wait a minute, is the loop on? I can't hear the loop. And I said, what's a loop? I'm sure most of you have heard that same question. And then I asked, what's a telecoil? Because she told me that's how you connect. I said, what's a telecoil? And she told me. I don't want people to show up someplace and be told the Auracast is turned on, so switch to Auracast and have them say, what is Auracast? There are too many times when people have spent thousands of dollars for hearing aids that did not have telecoils because the hearing care provider simply, for one reason or another, didn't tell them about it. I don't want to see this happen with another technology that's coming along, because if someone buys new hearing aids today that are not at least Auracast ready, if not Auracast enabled, then they're going to reach a period when they will need that technology and they won't have it. The typical person replaces their hearing aids every 5 to 7 years, is my understanding. So they might have to wait a while before they do it. But that is my concern. As far as assistive listening is concerned, it is going to be years before Auracast systems are as common as hearing loops. But there are going to be people who have hearing aids that are not capable of connecting to a hearing loop that could connect to an Auracast system. And I'm hoping that facilities will discover that it's not all that expensive to put in an Auracast system to run right along with their hearing loop while this transition takes place, as the old hearing loops are being replaced. But as far as the technology not being available, that simply is not true. There are devices available today on the market. Some of them were available and now they're sold out and they're being restocked with it, that people can use. Samsung now is offering Auracast capability in their telephones, in their TVs, in their computer pad devices. There's a long list of hearing aid manufacturers who either have hearing aids that are already Auracast enabled, or they are Auracast capable, which means that all they need to do is get an over-the-air update for them to work. I have a number of Auracast items that I have purchased online, and they all work. I can hook one of my Voce devices to any sound-producing device, and it will broadcast either a Bluetooth signal or an Auracast signal. And I can use another one of those devices as a receiver to receive that. There are a number of TV streamers on the market that you can buy today and put it on your TV just as you would a Bluetooth streamer that you get from your audiologist, except that this is not Bluetooth. It's classic Bluetooth. It is Auracast. And then if you have either new Auracast hearing aids or you have an Auracast capable pair of earbuds, you can listen to the TV. There are earbuds available, Bluetooth or Auracast earbuds available from a number of manufacturers. And my concern for people with hearing loss is not confined to just people with a serious hearing loss like I have. There are people who have a mild or moderate hearing loss, but they still have difficulty. They can buy a $100 pair of Auracast capable earbuds and have the same benefits as they would get from a $2,000 or $3,000 pair of hearing aids, because they don't need, frankly, the technology yet that is available in those hearing aids. But there is a list posted at my Loop New Mexico website of devices that are available on the market today. They're advertised as being Auracast capable, right now Auracast enabled. And anybody who wants to see that list can go to the Loop New Mexico website, which is www.loopnm.com, and click on one of the two one of the two links on that homepage to take them to the Auracast page. So Beyond that, I don't know what I can tell you about Auracast as to when it's going to be available in for large venues. Only the manufacturers know at this point, but there are smaller transmitters that you can get today that you could use for an HLAA chapter meeting, for example, if you had members who had Auracast capable hearing aids. That will work. And again, those are on the list that is posted at my website. I'm one of the original members of what became the Get in the Hearing Loop movement way back in 2010. Loop, New Mexico won an award from HLAA. They were the first ones to receive the Get in the Hearing Loop campaign or Hearing Loop Award. And I have continued to promote hearing loops, but I also promote other things. I encouraged my niece, who is a justice on the Nebraska Supreme Court, to loop the courtroom, because when she was sworn in, I went to the meeting and I couldn't understand what was being said. The room is so full of echoes that you simply don't know what's going on. Well, she took this to heart. She got to work with other people in the Supreme Court. They ended up investigating the various technologies. I was encouraging them to put in a loop. They wouldn't do it, partly because of the fact that they were going to have to saw grooves into their marble floor, and they refused to do that. They also found that it was going to be more expensive than they had anticipated. They looked at FM, decided that was no good because it didn't give them the privacy that they could get with other technologies. So they ended up going with infrared. Infrared has a lot of problems, but it also has some benefits that the other technologies don't afford. Once they did this, they reached out to the rest of the state and they got infrared systems put in every courthouse in all 93 counties in the state of Nebraska. And the important thing here was that hearing access was being provided to people. It wasn't coming from a hearing loop, which I would have preferred, but it was available to people. And that is my concern, is giving people the ability to hear, whether they're in a baseball park, whether they're in a performing arts center, whether they're in a place of worship, that they can hear. And whatever technology seems to fit that particular setting, I'm in favor of it. There are places who simply cannot put in a hearing loop. I think they still need to put in an FM system or something else. And as the time arrives that they could put in one of the Ori systems from Ampetronic or Listen Technology.
Yeah, Steve, and I wholeheartedly agree with Steve that if you're hard of hearing, there are people who would wear a bucket on their head if it would make them hear better, right? Now, not everybody is that way, but many would. And I think Steve is far more experimental and willing to try some of this new Auracast technology. But the promise is that Auracast will work as simple as a hearing loop, that all you need to do is walk into a facility and turn on the Auracast in your hearing aid. And the truth right now is 99.99% of all hearing aid users and cochlear implant users doesn't have Auracast in their hearing aids.
Okay, Juliette and Steve, I'm going to just pause for a minute. Steve, I did not introduce you, and a number of people are wondering who you are. So maybe
I wonder some myself.
summary. And then I'd also like to ask I've forgotten his name, the new public policy director at HLAA, who put a comment in about where Auracast is beginning to be available to speak at some point too, because I think it's an interesting, he's got a different take slightly. So first, tell us who you are. I know who you are, but I'm not going to attempt it.
Okay, well, I'm a retired businessman and a concert promoter. I was working for Columbia Artists in New York City up until 1981, and I left. I'm now retired, and I'm in New Mexico. And as soon as I got here, I began advocating because I had a lot of time on my hands. I began advocating for people with hearing loss. I joined what was then Self-Help for Hard of Hearing People. That's how I learned about loops and telecoils. I was involved, as I said, in the creation of the Get in the Hearing Loop campaign organization that HLAA has. I have served on the state licensing board for audiologists and hearing aid dispensers in New Mexico. I organized a group here in Albuquerque that we rewrote the city noise code in order to provide more protection for noise-induced hearing loss, among other things. I was a New Mexico State Chapter coordinator for HLAA for 10 years. And now I'm at a point where I'm really not driving, so my focus is on writing articles that inform people about hearing loops and about other concerns dealing with hearing loss. Oh, one other thing, there are several laws that have been passed here in New Mexico that were the result of one of my committees. For example, there's a 45-day mandatory trial period for hearing aids. There is a 30-day mandatory refund policy for returned hearing aids. There was a requirement for hearing aid coverage for children in health insurance policies. All of these are initiatives that I and the group of advocates that we've had active here in Albuquerque for years have fought for.
Thank you. Thank you from all of us. Do you, Steve, should we turn to questions at this point? For people have a lot of questions in the chat, unless you have other things you want to say before that.
No, I think that's all I have. I've said more than I anticipated.
Okay, so I'd like to ask first if Neil Snyder, who put is from HLA, I'm sorry, I blanked on your name. Would you mind just saying what you said in the chat in the form of a question or comment?
Hi, my name's Neil Snyder. I didn't expect to speak tonight. I'm in the middle of cooking dinner, by the way.
I can read what you put in the chat. I want you to burn yourself. Let me go all the way back up here. Okay, so Neil put in the chat that the Auracast Bluetooth standard exists in the United States electronics manufacturers for TVs, phones, tablets, and they are steadily adding this feature to their products, and that consumers will see a growing choice between loops and Auracasts. And I would like to add one thing to what Neil just put in the chat. Tom Kaufman believes that Auracast and hearing loops can exist side by side. He has an idea for, I forget what the term is that he uses, but a sort of a universal version of the hearing loop. And I'm wondering if Juliette or Steve, if either of you want to.
Yeah, I hear what you say, Neil, but it's a little bit like self-driving cars and jetpacks, okay? We've been promised jetpacks when I was watching the Jetsons, and we've been promised self-driving cars for a long time. But in order to make this work for every consumer who's very hard of hearing, the people who are on this chat, not just to people with mild hearing loss, that assistive listening standard is going to be critical, that IEC standard, so that in Europe and a lot of other countries where standards are adhered to, this technology isn't going to be installed right away. Now, I am not for old technology. I mean, I wish the whole world would go Auracast next week. But we are not ready, and I believe that HLAA should be at the forefront and making sure that consumers are equipped with every technology in their hearing aid and cochlear implant. And that means for the foreseeable future, they need telecoils and Auracast. We cannot keep saying Auracast is coming. It's been coming for 6 years, and it's still not here.
Catherine, I'd like to add something to that. This is Jerry Bergman.
Yeah, Jerry, go.
Right.
First of all, Jerry, go ahead and ask your question. But for others who want to ask questions, if you will go into the React at the bottom of your screen and click raise hand, I can then call on you one at a time. It's easier than trying to look at a big screen.
Please call on me before we adjourn.
I'm calling on you right now.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I have from Otojoy, from tonight's scheduled speaker's partner at Otojoy, James Rowe, a statement about Auracast not yet being comparable to hearing loops in large venues. And it's a one-pager, but the main points are people will need brand new hardware, which our speakers have mentioned. Very few Auracast transmitters in venues even exist on the market today.
No, that's not true.
Is one of the first, but adoption rates will be slow. Also, Auracast systems will be useless for the majority of people other than with a mild hearing loss because of the penetration of market points that Juliette brought forth and Steve seconded. So we all would like to see Auracast tomorrow, but it's still a bit down the road.
Thank you. We want to also be able to look forward, though. So this is basically information on something that is beginning to be available to us, and not probably we won't know when. But I do think that one of our speaker, I want to just honor one of the things he wanted to talk about, which is that he sees these as dual systems that will work together. So thank you, Jerry. And I'm going to call on Nancy Kingsley. You have to unmute yourself.
I had a question for those of us with cochlear implants. Will our processor just need changing, or will the actual implant need to be changed to work with Auracast?
This is Juliette. From what I know, it means that you'll need an update on your cochlear implant, the processor, but not the part that was implanted in the cochlea itself.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Matthew Bolton.
Hi, everyone. This is actually my first meeting, and I'm being that annoying person who's speaking in the first meeting they come to. I apologize, but I am actually really interested in this. I teach at a university here in New York City, and I have hearing loss. I've been trying to get the university to install hearing loops with, it seems like no success. And the answer that I keep getting is that it's too expensive, and they give me a different alternative technology each time, and every time I try it, it doesn't work for me. And they're also setting me up as if I am the voice of all deaf people, which is I find annoying. But now they have settled, it seems like, on Auracast as the alternative to installing hearing loops. And I'm trying to get a meeting with the president of the university to offer my point of view. But if you were in that meeting instead of me, any of you, what would you tell him? And the second thing is a kind of a more complicated question, that it seems like a lot of hearing assistive technologies are about broadcast. They're from the speaker to the listener. But as a teacher, I may have deaf people in the class, and I myself am deaf. How do we deal with the two-way or multi-way directional communication issue in a classroom? So those are my two questions. Thank you so much.
Those are two big questions. Who wants to take that on? Especially the first part.
The
Juliette?
first part, yeah. So there are some universities that have taken to installing hearing loops, including classrooms such as Purdue and the UVA. If you Google online UVA and hearing loops, you'll encounter a lot of pages. I absolutely agree with you, Matthew. They're expensive, but professionally installed Auracast systems aren't going to be cheap either. Now, it's very possible, like what Steve said, that if you're only wanting to transmit a voice, and we're not talking about a performing arts center with soundboards and multiple presenters or singers, it's going to be very different. And in that case, Auracast could be significantly less expensive. But the majority of people in your classroom who wear hearing aids currently do not have Auracast compatible hearing aids. And unless you wear Resound Nexia hearing aids, your hearing aids are also not compatible yet. But with a neck loop, we can make a lot of systems at least work with somebody who has a telecoil. Now, in your classroom, that requires a whole other different approach because, as you know, garbage in, garbage out. So as soon as I move this microphone away, I would hope that everybody notices that as soon as I move that microphone away, I go off the air. So if you do not have a system where you pass around a microphone from the students in the classroom, it's going to be hard for you to hear them unless they are making an effort to speak up. And as you know, as a teacher or as a professor, the less they know, the quieter they speak, right? Yeah. So, and it's possible a Roger system might work for you. And I don't know, are you in New York City?
Yes, I don't know why I'm being coy. I'm at Pace University. I'm not gonna.
But maybe, I'm thinking in New York City, isn't there the Center for Speech and Communication? I mean, what you need is an audiologist who's willing to think outside of the box with you. And it's you need a solution that works for you. So I'm willing to to be some kind of support in the background, and that brings me to I have managed to get hundreds of hearing loops installed, and everyone was different. Everyone required rallying the community around it. To expect that these Auracast systems are just miraculously going to happen around the world, I hope that's true, but I don't believe it. So I'm trying to at least educate professionals that to set their patients up for success, they need to make sure these hearing aids have everything. And that means all of you in this call need to write a letter to the supplier, the manufacturer of the hearing aids you wear, send it double copies to and I'm happy to help you get those addresses, that you need everything in your hearing aids, not just the latest and greatest. It's like buying a car, but getting the Bluetooth plug, but not getting the windshield wipers. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. I'm getting on my soapbox. I'll shut up.
Catherine, this is Ron Mayra from Contacta Systems.
Yeah, from where?
Contacta.
Contacta, okay. That's a loop installer.
We are a loop manufacturer. We are an assistive listening manufacturer. I just wanted to maybe a real quick perspective from the perspective of a manufacturer of assistive listening that actually works on an Auracast product right now. Is that okay?
Yes, except somebody has their hand raised ahead of you.
I'm sorry.
We have a good 20 minutes left, so let the person whose hand is raised speak. And I would also like to follow up on the question that was just posed. And I don't really know who can answer this. Maybe Neil Snyder. Juliette, what are the rights of a professor at Pace University to get something installed for him and for his students? I know that Lauren Schechter, our captioner, often works with students in universities, and I'm sure that it's an ADA accommodation. Where is the line drawn? How does it get done?
And I'm no ADA expert, Matthew, but there has to be somebody at the university who is the ADA coordinator. And by law, they are required to make a reasonable accommodation. And obviously, that's a very stretchy concept, right? It's got to work for you. Now, I would love to drive a Cadillac or a Rolls Royce, but I don't, and so they need to come up with a solution that works for you. And it may also require you to make some changes in your classroom that aren't always easy to make, meaning you got to speak up and you have to tell your students that you are dealing with this, and that just like we don't ask somebody with a bum knee to run, you're in that same situation. And there's people on this call, such as Catherine and such as Jerry and others, who are probably far more knowledgeable about this assistive technology that has worked for them, at least in their personal situation. So I don't want to take up a lot of time on this, but I will put my email in the chat, so you're welcome to email me.
The other thing with Matthew's question is that it also affects the students, and installing a loop system would work for the students as well as for him. Every university has a disability coordinator, and I don't know if you've found the one at Pace, but that's the person to go to. And Pace is a big university, and I think they probably have a legal obligation to accommodate you. But I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to call on Carol Enshine. Carol, are you here? Carol, you're muted and we can't see you.
I'm taking care of both now.
Okay.
Thank you. This is, wow, it's a lot of information, and I'm new to learning about Auracast, so I just feel like a beginner. My question, I'm trying to understand a little more clearly, because I think somebody put this question in the chat in a different way, is I just got a new pair of hearing aids. I got them free from my union, so they're a particular manufacturer. They're working fine. They're very good. I had the option of getting telecoil. I got the telecoil option, but of course there was no even mention of Auracast. I only first heard of it here on HLAA's discussion the last time, I think. So what I'd like to know more, and I don't want to take up a lot of time in this meeting, about about lobbying for Auracast. You know, would I try to find out more about why my hearing aids don't have it? Would I have to, when it becomes more conventionally available, get a new pair of hearing aids that they would be making Auracast availability like it's telecall availability? I don't understand the nuances is what I'm asking.
Yeah. Carol, the good answer is, for the time being, you have telecoils in your hearing aids. So let's say the Broadway theaters start using Auracast 5 years from now. Many of them have hearing loops, so you can go to the theater and press the button on your hearing aids to turn on the telecoil feature. But if they no longer have a loop, or they never had a loop and they opted for Auracast, you need to go to the service desk and pick up a listening device with a neck loop. And the neck loop is a personal hearing loop. I don't know if I'm explaining.
I know, I understand. It's what I used to do with telecoil.
Yes, exactly. So Auracast, the company Empatronic, and I'm sure Contacta will be in the same situation, will have listening devices that people with hearing aids and telecoils will be able to use. In other words, it won't stream direct to your hearing aids like hearing loops do. You have to pick up a device.
But does the device allow it to go directly into my hearing aids?
Yes, it will.
That's what the device does.
Yes.
Allows it to go directly into my hearing aids.
Yeah.
So if they don't use telecoil anymore, that's what I would have to do.
If they don't use a hearing loop, but you have a telecoil in your hearing aid, it's the telecoil that's the antenna. So as long as you have a telecoil, you'll be able to use systems that have been installed around the country, but you need to always either, if there's a loop, just push the button and the sound will start streaming to your hearing aids, or you have to pick up a listening device with a neck loop.
Okay.
Whether it's Auracast, FM, or infrared.
I would have to get the device.
I'm going to refer you to the hearingloop.org website, because there's lots of information about these different systems. Hearingloop.org is no longer just about hearing loops. That's
the website, hearingloop.org. Okay. Now I have another slight other question along with that. Somebody mentioned, you or someone else mentioned something about getting larger spaces set up to receive, for people to have them. So I'm a member of a small organization, a small religious organization that wants to look into it, because more and more older adults are getting hearing aids. And the hearing devices they're using now, you have to put on a headset and plug it into something in order. You have to not use your hearing aids, is what I'm saying, if they're not working. So they're looking into
There is a solution. If you were to purchase neck loops for the listening devices and plug it into the existing boxes that you now use. So right now you have a box that an earphone set is plugged into, correct?
Right.
Take the headset out and plug in a neck loop. Carol, I have my email address. If you email me, I'll be happy to help you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Juliette. And actually, if you maybe want to put it in the packet that we're going to make available to people, which includes your slides, just a brief summary of what you just said, that would be helpful. Steve, did you want to address the university question? Is that why your hand is
Well,
up?
I was wondering when Catherine bought her new hearing aids, how long ago it was, and what kind are they?
What my
Are you talking to me, Carol? I just got them about 3-4 weeks ago. I didn't buy them. It's a long story, but no, I just have them. They're about 3-4 weeks now that I have them. They're very new.
And Steve, if I could make a comment, we can't see the bottom of your face, so it's hard to lip read. There you go.
Okay, can you see me now?
Okay, can we move on to Ellen? I think the specificity is hard for people to get.
Hi, can you hear me? Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Good to see a lot of you. I just want to mention something that's running around in my head and I cannot think of the specifics, but I wanted to help Matthew, is that his name, the gentleman who wants some hearing device in a classroom where it can work back and forth. I remember when I was really active in the hearing loop group, there was somebody who had this done in a classroom. I'm trying to think of who the installer was. At the moment, I'm drawing a blank. I don't know if anyone on this call has any recollection of this. It was in New York, a New York college. But if I can remember, I'll send it to you, Catherine, and maybe we can send it to this Matthew.
Okay, well, actually, Merv, who I cut off earlier, works for Contacta, which is an installer. So, Merv, are you still on the on this meeting?
Yes, I am. Matthew, I've just messaged you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your name isn't Merv. I'm sorry.
My name is Ron.
Merv. Okay, sure. Thank you. Can we see you? Is that possible?
I think so. There we go.
That's much easier. Thank you.
So firstly, Matthew, I've messaged you separately with a suggested solution because we have a system that has an RF transceivers where you're able to receive and transmit sound wirelessly. So if you wear a transceiver with a neck loop, as Juliette explained, or with a headset or earphones, and then your students do the same, you're all communicating with each other. I just wanted, Catherine, really quick, just to maybe give a perspective from a point of view of a manufacturer. Contacta is a manufacturer of assistive technology. We have a wide product range of hearing loop products, RF, which Juliette mentioned at the start, infrared, and we are now working on our Auracast transmitter. I just want to circle back to a comment that Stephen made at the start about Auracast ready or Auracast enabled. And to be clear, Auracast enabled in a smartphone or Auracast ready in a smartphone is not helping communication with Auracast. You need to have a firmware and a software update for it to become an Auracast handshake device. Our emphasis as manufacturer is to help people here and now. We want to help people hear consistently and reliably. That means that if I want to access an assistive listening system in the US or in Europe or anywhere else in the world, I have the same experience as a user. And this is really important for us as manufacturer. One of the things that I want to maybe mention is Juliette at the beginning of the call has sort of explained how Auracast works and what the pros and cons are. There's something that Juliette hasn't mentioned is with hearing loops, we have different types of hearing loops. They all work in the same way for the user, which means if I go into my local church, I can hear through the loop. I can hear in the same way if I go to my bank counter and there's a loop installed in the counter. Or if I go to an airport check-in desk and I check in and there's a loop installed, I can hear in the same way. And if it's adjusted correctly according to the standard, I can hear in the same levels as well, with the same sound quality. We install thousands of loops every month in one-to-one applications. We supply, manufacture, and also installed, and we have a network of dealers in the US and outside of the US that install those systems. So just some examples, we are installing counter loops every month in Chase banks across the US. We started the rollout in Loblaw, which is the biggest grocery store chain in Canada. And that will include over 2,000 hearing loops that are installed in Loblaw counters. Starbucks cafes. We are installing 520 counter loops in Dubai airport. We are installing 2,200 counter loops now in Austria, in pharmacies in Austria. So just an example, the hearing loop is not just in your local theater or in your local church in large area, it's also in one-to-one applications. And this is not available with Auracast. Auracast is for large area at the moment, for large area only. Auracast is an open system. It has no way to provide me with privacy. So if I'm a user and I'm going to my bank and I'm now talking to the bank teller, I don't really want the customer behind me to listen to the conversation. So that's an issue that is not resolved by Auracast. There is no available Auracast solution for integration, for example. There is issues with latency that Juliette mentioned, and the latency depends on a number of factors. So, for example, if we install an Auracast system in a big theater, in one of the New York Broadway theaters, we will need to extend the range of the transmitter from the initial sound source. So that means we're using additional access points. Every access point like this increases the latency. I've experienced Auracast systems myself where the latency was just unacceptable for me as a user. So on the other hand, Auracast is an exciting technology. We see Auracast as a technology that will live alongside all the other technologies. It's not going to replace hearing loops because it is not capable to deliver the solution that hearing loops can deliver in certain applications. It's going to be superior in other applications. For example, on transport, public transport, on a bus or a train, where loops are very problematic, Auracast is ideal. The question is, as a user, as a hearing aid user, do I really want to switch between, 5 or 6 different technologies throughout my journey? I'm not so sure. We are developing an Auracast transmitter at the moment that will be available probably in about 7 or 8 months. And we then develop another one. But they are all hybrid transmitters. It means that these transmitters are going to be able to connect to a hearing loop driver and then output the sound through Auracast. I think that the stance of us as manufacturer, but also of the Bluetooth special interest group is very much that it's an additional technology. It's not going to replace anything as such. I see a lot of things that are being said and are being written on social media and on the internet. We have to be honest and say that there is a lot of money in this, behind this, and sometimes the details and the technical details get camouflaged by people that put posts that are not necessarily correct. And I've seen some things that people have written that I can read it and I can see that it's not correct. And unfortunately, it gets published on social media and on the internet, and it gets exposure. And I think that there's a lot of confusion in the market at the moment across the different technologies. So circling back to what Juliette said at the start, our aim as manufacturers to help people hear now, not in 10 years and not in 7 years when they have to buy a new hearing aid. We get daily inquiries, tens of inquiries every day for assistive listening. Sometimes RF is the best solution, sometimes hearing loops, and sometimes infrared. Stephen mentioned an infrared, an example of infrared that was the best technology in that particular application. And we just want to make sure our emphasis as a user, as a manufacturer, is that the user experience is good, is that it is easy for the user to access the sound and access the system. The people mentioning the difficulties of hearing, or I don't know how to access the system. That needs to be that needs to be clear. We are working on education of audiologists, which is difficult. But yeah, just wanted to give maybe a perspective from a manufacturer's side.
This is Juliette. Dana Simon is sharing her screen, and that makes it difficult for some people to see everybody. I don't know if I'm the only one who has this problem.
You are not the only one, no.
Okay.
Yeah, Juliette, I just said that, but I realized I was muted. I think it's whoever it is, it's Diana or Dana, doesn't know how to turn it off. You go to the bottom of your screen and you'll see a green arrow that says share.
Works.
And you want to click on that and it will go off. I hope.
I've
But,
had it myself.
What, thank you, Juliette.
Worked.
Oh, thank you very much. That works fine. I think we have time for the last two people who have their hands raised. First is Dana Simon and then Ruth Bernstein. Dana?
Hello, I don't know how to turn the screen share off. I'm visually impaired.
Somebody else did it for you. Don't worry about
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry.
We see you.
Oh, okay. Dana, did you have a question? No. Okay, then we'll move on to Ruth.
I just wanted to tell the gentleman at Pace that I put contact information for Michelle Di Stefano, the head of audiology at CHC, in the chat. So I hope he gets that.
We can save a copy of the chat. David, I think you're the person who can do that. Thank you, Ruth. We are towards the end. Jerry, you want to have the last word? You're muted, so it doesn't do you any good to have the last word with the mute on.
Just to add a little context to the Contacta presentation, which I appreciate, without getting into brands of manufacturers and installers of assistive listening technologies, there are 3 systems, basically, or 4. In addition to hearing loops, there's Auracast, which we've talked about. There is also Wi-Fi based systems, and there are also new RF radio frequency based systems. The manufacturers can propose various options, and somebody considering providing accessibility should take all of the factors that are necessary into account and then ask which system best meets that situation. And just quickly, when it comes to assistive listening, there is a transmitter. That's the source, takes the communication from the source, and then there's the receiver. And the receiver can be in your ear, or it can be worn around your neck as a receiver if you have a neck loop that will send it to your telecoils. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. I don't know whether you can answer this, Jerry, but so there are 4 different systems and the venue can decide which to install, but what happens to the consumer?
Exactly. And I just put a link in here, the comparison chart on the Center for Hearing Access website. And that explains a lot. Yes, is it important that it's cheap? Is it important that it's easy to install? Or is it important that it works for people who are hard of hearing? But all three do not come together. You have to pick two.
I think we have to end on uncertainty. And maybe we can go back to this topic at another time. I just want to thank Juliette and Steve for, I don't know how many of you were here at the beginning, but our scheduled speaker had a medical emergency, and 5 minutes into the meeting wasn't here yet, and that's when we found out about it. So we know Juliette and Steve both know quite a bit, and so they did this completely impromptu. And we're so grateful to both of you. And I also want to thank, sorry, I can't remember your name, that the person from Contact. It was good to hear that perspective. So thank you everybody for your questions. Next month is December, and it's a meeting that is mostly just really fun. We always have a musician who has something to do with hearing loss, and I won't try to explain who our speaker is the next time, but I think it's going to be a really great meeting. So keep an eye on our website and our email blasts and register and come. So thank you everyone for all of this. We'll really try to get some of this information in a readable form. Okay.
Hi, Catherine.
Bye.
Thank you. Excellent meeting.